Welcome back to the report. Talha Ahsan is due home, but nobody seems to know when. Ahsan was convicted in the USA of terrorism charges after a lengthy extradition battle. He's now completed a 2-year sentence. Yesterday, a rally to celebrate his homecoming was held outside the Home Office in London. Yasmin Khatun has more.
Behind me here, people have turned up at this demonstration to welcome home Talha Ahsan, calling out injustice that they say has been perpetrated by the Home Office. A crowd of around 100 people gathered in front of the government building on Sunday afternoon to welcome home a man whose name has become synonymous to injustice. Talha Ahsan was told he was free in July after he was sentenced to time already served by a US court. Talha was arrested at his family home in London in 2006 in response to a request from the USA under the US-UK Extradition Act 2003. He was subsequently detained without trial or charge over 6 years before his extradition to the United States 2 years ago, accused of terror-related activity.
I'm so pleased for Talha, his friends and his family that they are at long last to be reunited.
The lineup of speakers at this demonstration showed how wide-ranging his support has been over the past 8 years, with politicians, students and activists coming out to show their solidarity. But the man himself, Talha Ahsan, wasn't actually there. As celebrations for his homecoming continue, Talha's family still don't actually know when they will see him again, as the date is yet to be given by the authorities for what they've said are security reasons. Speakers at the demo lambasted the criminal justice system that led to Talha being imprisoned for 6 years without trial. The police, the Home Office, the Crown Prosecution Service and US authorities came in for heavy criticism. Many demonstrators also came down to show their support to a family who have campaigned tirelessly.
I'm here to support Talha and Hamja and the rest of their family. I've known Hamja for about a year now, and I've seen the way that he's campaigned tirelessly for his brother and highlighted the injustice that's happened to him. And for me, it's important to show my support for their campaign and also to show support for other people who've found themselves in similar situations.
A feeling of unity was prevalent as speakers paid tribute to Talha's resilience whilst in detention and his passion for poetry, reminding the crowd that although this was a celebration, this case should not be seen in isolation.
We're saying we're going to follow you, we're going to follow the case of Talha Ahsan and everybody who's responsible for inflicting such cruelty upon him and his family and everybody who falls into this extradition trap. That's what we're saying. We're not going away. This wasn't just about Talha, this is about current extradition laws.
So I think it's very important for every Muslim to acknowledge that if one of our brothers or sisters are suffering, that we should at least stand with them, some sense of solidarity, support any justice that could be done to rectify, but mainly as well to display that there is an ongoing culture where Muslims are being singled out, targeted, demonized, and if that means illegal renditioning, illegal extradition, in my opinion, and in other cases such as prosecution without any evidence, without any trial of any date set, without any evidence being seen, that's a problem for everyone, Muslim or non-Muslim. So it's I think it's a social justice point of view. It's a principled point for me as well.
Yasmin Khatun, The Report, Islam Channel.
Well, Yasmin joins me in the studio now alongside Talha's brother Hamja. Welcome to you both. Yasmin, I mean, were you surprised that so many people turned up on that demonstration?
Not at all. I think this is a case that's really important for the community. They've followed what's been going on for the last 8 years. We've seen Talha both in Britain and then taken over to the US. A number of demonstrations have taken place. I guess the only difference was that this was a slightly happier one and that he'd be coming home soon.
And of course, the Islam Channel has followed this case all the time. I mean, why is it so important to the Muslim community in Britain, do you think?
Well, I think it's incredibly important. One, because this was a young Muslim man with Asperger's syndrome who had been taken away during the height of this war on terror. You know, and there's a disproportionate amount of young Muslim men who have been taken away. So for the Islam Channel, as a community-based channel, it's incredibly important for us to follow these stories. That for young Muslim men, what's going on? Why have they been taken away? What's happened to Talha? I think our community wants to know. So if they want to know, for us, we've got to make sure they're hearing about it.
Well, Hamja, I mean, your brother may come home very soon, but he was given actually what turned out to be an unexpectedly light sentence by the judge in the United States, I think. Was she sort of implying that the whole case was pretty flimsy, do you think?
Yeah, most of the US government's case was actually rejected in this decision, and it's something of a landmark decision because this is the first time you have like concepts like defensive jihad being discussed in a mature and intelligent fashion in a US courtroom. And we had an expert witness, Karen Armstrong, the best-selling author, and I mean, the sad thing, Talha had to plea bargain, which is something that needs to be understood. So, that's something that 97% of people do in federal cases, and it doesn't even necessarily mean guilt. It's like a negotiation. Talha was kept in indefinite solitary confinement prior to that. I mean, I maintain Talha should never been put in prison in the first place. So. But this is the best we can expect from the US judicial system. So as far as their system goes, it's a positive result.
There's a terrible imbalance, isn't there? Because if you don't go for the plea bargain, if you insist on a not guilty verdict or a step plea by yourself, then you can be in jail for even longer waiting for trial or something. Yeah. Is that right?
There was a House of Lords Select Committee just after Talha's sentencing, and his case was brought up by the Liberty Director as one of the key issues is the pressure to plea bargain. I mean, even Conservative MPs, law lords, they say plea bargain is intolerable and unacceptable under the UK law. And not only that, even if you plead innocent, the government can appeal against you all the way up to the Supreme Court. And all that time, you'll be in isolation. I mean, Talha was 23 hours a day without any human contact for nearly 2 years. This type of treatment has been condemned by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture, and it causes irreversible mental damage. So Talha was thinking, how do I protect my sanity and my health for the future, and how do I get reunited with my family? Because my family, my elderly parents haven't seen me, and it's destroying them. And so he chose an option that got him reunited with his family, although he still isn't reunited yet.
And how bad is his health condition at the moment, do you know?
Well, Talha has Asperger's syndrome, like Gary McKinnon, who wasn't extradited on human rights grounds. So he's more vulnerable to... I mean, 50% of suicides in the US prison system occur in this type of solitary confinement. That's some statistic we should remember. And that's a US senator saying that, so it might even be worse. In forms of self-harm. Talha witnessed forms of severe self-mutilation by other prisoners and very traumatic episodes. I mean, the things you hear about in Guantanamo Bay, like forced cell extraction, cells are gassed out and people like choke. And there were several suicide attempts that he'd report quite casually. So he'd be put under lockdown because other people... he was in a death row prison, and it's funny, you'd have people on death row attempting suicide before... so it was a very... I mean, I went and visited him in the Supermax prison, and it was one of the most inhumane and just vile places I've ever seen. It was just these concrete tunnels that just went on forever, and we would put in these little concrete boxes. I mean, that's not designed for human beings.
Now, you mentioned Gary McKinnon just now. I mean, he was not put in prison. He was out on bail until the extradition thing was complete. Why do you think Talha was actually locked up in Britain?
I mean, a lot of commentators and human rights groups say it's a form of institutionalised racism, this sort of double standards shown towards a Muslim citizen. He's not treated as a citizen in the same way. And we see this, even if, the British Guantanamo detainees, they were treated with some sort of timidity in bringing them back home as if this wasn't their home. The Daily Mail referred to them as other unwanted guests and so forth. Having said that, there's a strong sense of unity and love between all the extradition families. So Gary McKinnon's mum has actually written poetry for Talha, saying there's thousands of thinking of him and they want him home. And if you read her book, Saving Gary McKinnon, she writes very warmly of Talha's family and Barbara's family.
And they visited each other then?
Yeah, we're good friends with the McKinnon's family, yeah.
So when do you expect him to come back? Have you any idea at all?
We were told by our own MP in the Foreign Office that he'd be back in mid-August, but it is mid-August and he's not here. I mean, I was expecting at least come back in time for Eid. So we've had 8 years of Eids without him. So for my mother and father, that's particularly horrible. My parents, I mean, they were initially happy when they heard news of his freedom, and we got hundreds of messages from around the world, but that elation of news of his freedom has seemed to have sort of gone into this sort of prolonged heartbreak because they don't know when he's going home. And my mum doesn't feel she can rest properly until she sees him face to face.
But because the judge actually ordered his immediate release, didn't she? I mean, yeah, so why is he now being held at all?
Yeah, he's served like over a month extra, it seems. It's just, I mean, even if he was declared a free man, he was in this orange Guantanamo Bay style jumpsuit, and he was led away in handcuffs despite declared a free man and not a threat to anyone, and described in actually very positive terms by the judge as someone quite tolerant and peaceful. I mean, even if we take the alleged conduct, it's like from 13 years ago, and it pretty much consists of like handling a PO box of postal orders for about 5 months. So it's not, there's no operational terrorism or anything. The Foreign and Commonwealth Officer said they've cleared his travel documents a very long time ago. So you know, I don't know what US deportation law is or the US immigration law is. It might be something that's just ordinarily and normally brutal. I mean, but the funny thing is, in the courtroom they said you have no right to be here, even though, you know, they'd ripped him from his family home into this death row prison, a country he'd never set foot on prior to his extradition request.
Well, it is an extraordinary case, and I hope he comes back soon for the sake of you and particularly your parents.
Thank you.
We've now come to our second break of the programme. Join us shortly, where we'll be going through a roundup of the news and bringing you some tweets and looking closely at anti-government demonstrations in Pakistan. Join us shortly.